Today we're going to be doing two different techniques, direct application dye and also reverse speckling. And when I say reverse speckling, I mean we're going to be taking ties. You can use old t-shirt, yarn, cotton yarn works best, zip ties, and we're going to be tying resists into the yarn, dyeing it really deep, and then we're going to be doing, for example, like this bright aqua color on one of these really deep blues, etc. So we're going to do a full rainbow of direct application and a full rainbow of reverse speckling. And when I say direct application, this is actually what we'll be working on. It'll look like this when it's done. The skeins are 100 grams, so we're going to want to do 5% dye concentration, which is a really deep shade, so that would be 5 grams of dye. I'm going to use Washfast Brilliant Violet from Pro-Chem and Purple Pop from Dharma because I think it makes a really, really nice, crazy bright color. So that's 1.5. I'm not worried about cross-contamination, but if you are, I wouldn't do this. So we're going to do a little bit more of this and a little bit more here. There we are, that's close enough, 4.8. I just want this to be a little deeper, so we're going to do midnight blue and this color deep purple, and it's just enough to shift the shade value. Okay, now let's check that color again. There we are. That's what I want, that kind of deep saturation. Now I'm going to do the same thing with all the other skeins, pulling from my selection. So here's a rough guide of what our colors are going to look like now that they're already mixed. Citric acid is in there. Now I like to put the skeins in dry because if the skeins are pre-wetted, then the dye will actually go underneath this tie and you won't get a nice clean line to over dye that's white. So because it's superwash, it's going to take the water really, really quickly. I also like the marbling effect that this gives. And we do that with each one of them. It's very important when you're doing deep colored solid shade dyeing to gently move your skeins around, because underneath the burner, if you don't, in a ring, you will see really, really, really dark patches because the heat turns the color even darker. So this section on the top, if you don't move it, is going to be far less color saturated than what's on the bottom. So we just want evenness in terms of color saturation. So this is the deep, deep blue to give you an idea of what it looks like before all the dye has absorbed. While those are cooking, we're going to mix up some dye stock. So 5 grams of dye. We're going to do about a tablespoon of citric acid. And this is 500 milliliters of water, or 2 cups, and that's how much mine holds. So this is 10 minutes off the heat, and you can see that most of the dye has absorbed. Once this cools completely to room temperature, you know, it'll be completely clear. And it's really important to always let it cool to room temperature, even if it's superwash, because you want maximum dye absorption. We're going to be recreating this skein right here, an oil slick gradient, except instead of black, we're going to be doing it violet. And another trick, see all these little tiny color bits? This is really what makes it look like an oil slick when it's knit up, because you're going to have a double-ended rainbow here, and then the other side is mostly black. And the way I do this is superwash picks up the color right away, so when you put the dye on and you flip the side over, you'll have patches of white, and I just go in with the syringe tips and color that in. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. We're going to start with fluorescent pink in the middle. The reason I use the syringes is because these tips leak no matter how, I mean, these are the expensive nice ones, and they're just not going to give you as crisp of a line. So then we're just going to inject the dye, and you really want to work it in so that you don't have any white patches, right? Because if you do, it'll ruin the effect. So then we flip it over to make sure, and sure enough, we continue on to the back side. Now we're going to open this up and make sure that it's saturated all the way through to the middle. Looks like we need to get a little bit more. Here we go. Sorry, I'm doing this one-handed with my left hand, so now we're just going to pick up the next color. I like to work the color in where I want the edge and then work it towards the pink. If you put it on the pink and work outwards, you'll have very little pink once it gets heat set, so you want to work it where you want the edge this way and then just kind of press it in so that you have a nice color flow, and this one doesn't overpower this color, if that makes any sense. So we work from the line we want it to be at, and then we press, press, press. Same thing on the other side of the pink, so we're going to start here. Press, press, press. You just keep stacking the colors in the way you want them until you feel like you're ready to add in your base background color. All our colors blocked in, so now we're just going to start pulling it over and looking for light patches or white patches to put in some fun, like we can do on a violet base, hot pink, hot purple, anything but orange or yellow really, unless you want a brown spot. So we'll look here. What do we have? Pretty good saturation level. Anywhere you see a white spot, you can go in with your, brilliant violet, or you can add in a color that complements it. Here we go. So we're going to put some hot pink right there. I'm just going to use this since it's at the edge. And it looks like we could probably do bright aqua right over here. Anywhere you see a light patch. And what happens in the knitted fabric is that every once in a while, you're going to have your double repeat rainbow, and you're going to have a big violet stripe, and you'll have little tiny runs of like blue and pink in this particular instance. So now the most important thing is to wipe up all the excess dye around it, because if you don't, you could end up getting a lot of this violet over here on this yellow and turning it brown. So we really want to make sure that that is all taken care of. We also don't want this color to run down while it's heat setting and muddy or murky any of these colors. Okay, now we're going to grab another piece, and over the top it goes. And you basically just seam up the sides like this. Pull this down this way, seam this side up, and we're going to throw it in this steamer right here, wrapped jelly roll style, 15 minutes each side, and then let it cool completely to room temperature. Back to our dye pots. They are totally clear and the water is cool. So we're ready to rinse these. Here's our near black saturation rainbow, and all you gotta do is find the tie, cut underneath, and here's our white section ready for over dyeing. So I'm just gonna cut the ties off all of these, and then we'll get to part 2. So I think I want to keep these fairly simple. I'm going to take our pink skein first. I'm just going to lay it out, and I think we're going to do like just hot pink over the white sections, and then one of these we're going to do a little rainbow, but it'll only show up in the finished knitted garment. It won't show up every row. So now we're going to work in just a little bit of the yellow right here. Grab our fluorescent orange. And some green. So the way this will work up, the first 20 repeats will be yellow, they'll have one little yellow fleck, then the next 20 green, and so on and so forth. So that's skein number 1. Now we just got to do the rest of them. Getting back to our oil slick gradient, don't be afraid to play with color placement. Think about when this knits up. So this is, probably your cast on, and as it gets in, you're going to get like a really cool disco effect if you change, like this one's yellow, green, blue, and then this one's green, blue, purple, a little bit of pink, and then back again. So have fun. Do something that you don't think you've seen before and take a chance on how it might knit up. This variation is nice too. If you look closely, it's all super dark saturation greens and blues and purples, not black. And then little bits of black on this side with more vibrant. A rainbow skein with urea, citric acid, water, and black dye. This is one way to speckle if you want more of a sort of like almost a blood spatter. Bright rainbow, dark version rainbow, black tips on either end. Now we're just going to take a pinch here with a dry gloved finger of jet black dye from Pro-Chem, and we're going to just do like a little bit of speckling. I love this dye because of how finely milled it is. It's almost like powdery sand, and so it creates a really tight, crisp speckle. Here are our 2 gradient sets, all dry. So I'm going to unwind these so you can see them in their full glory. This is the dark matter set and the oil slick set. So we have many different ways to make the same type of effect. So all together you'll have oil slick skeins that have a double-ended rainbow with black or dark blue and purple in between, a single one that is mostly green, blue, purple, one that's all color with black marbling and speckling, one that is black color, black color, black color to create more of a pooled effect, one that has a green, blue, purple, and a pink, orange, yellow. So you'll get like one little stripe and then a bunch of black, and then another little stripe and then a bunch of black, and then finally our last one with a lighter color value. So that's the oil slick gradient. So when I say it's reverse speckling, you'll have these 1 stitch pops of color in some of the longer sections where it was on the inside of the tie. That's like maybe 1.5 to 2 stitches. So it really does give the effect of like fake intarsia or speckles, where instead of a lighter base with a darker speckle, we have a darker speckle with a lighter base. You can really play around with color application and what your base color is. I love the look of a dark smoky base with a bright pop of color, because a simple project, garter stitch or stockinette, anything with this adds all the flair you need without having to do any of the extra work like cabling and all that. I'm a lazy knitter. So this particular one is a red. We have a red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, and then this black one has one of each color. So that is how you do that. I hope I addressed all the questions and you are inspired to do something fun with this technique.